In this episode of the Exploring Information Security podcast, what is the Innocent Lives Foundation?
Computers now have primary control of critical functions.
Houston, recommend vector transfer.
Your go for APU shutdown on time.
Roger, go for deploy.
Nice to be in orbit.
Welcome to the Exploring Information Security podcast, where you will learn, explore, and grow your security mindset. I am your host, Timothy D. Block, and in this episode, we will be exploring the Innocent Lives Foundation. With me to do that is Chris Hadnagy, the CEO of Social Engineer and the Innocent Lives Foundation. He's actually the founder. And then Shane McCombs, who is the Chief Operations Officer of the Innocent Lives Foundation. Show notes can be found at exploresec.com/EIS. You can support the podcast by donating, signing up for the newsletter, giving me feedback for the show. You can give me feedback for the show at timothy.dblock@exploresec.com. You can also hit me up on LinkedIn. If you hit me up for a connection on LinkedIn, let me know that you're a listener so I will connect with you. And then, of course, you can rate it on your favorite podcast platform. That's how it gets a little bit more play. So this was an interesting one. I've known Chris for a while. Actually went on a whiskey adventure with him, Shane, and some other people, hoping to do a future podcast on that, kind of promoting. We did a barrel selection. So that is coming out in the future. But for the time being, they do have their second annual gala, Ending Child Exploitation, which is September 21st, 2024. So you can go there and sign up for that. That will be at the Woodshed in Los Angeles, California. It sounds like a really fun event with some really great bands. The band is actually the Action Figures, and they're all like former actors that were essentially, they had like an action figure after them. So the person I knew was from Band of Brothers. So it's kind of really cool that they're doing that kind of stuff. But be sure to go check that out. You can go to innocentlivesfoundation.org. You can check out the podcast show notes here at exploresec.com/EIS. Look for the ILF episode. So a couple other things that we forgot to mention during the podcast, but they wanted me to include, is that they are looking for volunteers. So if you're into digital marketing, they are looking for a volunteer there. If you're an intern or just interested in helping out, that's one way to help out. They also need a fundraising expert. You can, for either one of those, if you're willing to help out, go submit to the website, innocentlivesfoundation.org. So with that, let's get right into it.
What is the ILF? Well, it stands for the Innocent Lives Foundation. So that's, of course, the most important part. And it's a nonprofit that I started 6.5. Are we going 6.5, Shane? 6.5.
6.5, yeah.
6.5 years ago. And it's kind of funny, not funny, but it was ironic because things have changed over those 6.5 years. When I started it, it was built because I during my corporate job, I had uncovered somebody who was creating his own child abuse material and then trading it and selling it on the dark web. And because of my work, he got arrested. He'll be in prison for 150 years. And that felt amazing. Like, it was like, whoa, for the first time I left, I felt like maybe like a superhero or something, like I actually could do some good in the world and not just break into places. And I wanted to start something, but every time I went out and volunteered for a group or looked at it, everyone was focusing on saving the kids, which of course is very important. But I had this different vision. I wanted to stop the predators. I was like, if we could stop the supply chain, then or disrupt it, then we can do something even more where there's no supply chain for all the predators downwind, right? So I went to my lawyer and I said, hey, I really want to do this, but I know we're covered in illegalities because we're talking about child porn, we're talking about videos, content, dark web, like how do I do this? And he kind of gave me a list of like 5 or 6 things that I had to tackle. And it took me about 6 or 8 months to figure that out, like a VDI that would allow us to blur and block images and videos, making sure we're not allowing people to do this on their home computer, how are we going to vet people appropriately. Once I got that all outlined, he said, I want to join the board. And I'm like, really?
And Chris, what were you expecting him to say?
I don't know. I was expecting him to say no. Like, you're crazy, like you're nuts. Like, every time I tell him something for anything with my work, he's always like, "What? This is why I have gray hair. This is why." Like, I was going to break into a bank in Jamaica, and I call him when I'm in Jamaica, and I say, "Hey, can you help me if I get arrested in Jamaica?" He's like, "Well, not really, but I can do some research. When are you going?" I'm like, "I'm here." He's like, "Dear God, man. You have to give me like a couple weeks, right?" So this is the kind of stuff I expected him to kind of laugh at me and kick me out of his office. So I started it, and then I announced it in 2017. And literally, I thought, we're going to get 4 or 5 people to help out. We're going to be a really small nonprofit. Maybe after a conference, we'll get together in a hotel room. We'll hack away for a few days, and then we'll figure it out. We'll hand these over to law enforcement. I was sorely mistaken in a very good way. We quickly were up to like 30, 40 volunteers. I had been started working directly with the FBI. We were closing cases left and right, and I was like, okay, we're doing all this like in Google on Excel sheets, and I was like, I need help, right? And that's when I reached out to Shane and basically said, "Can you help me write a job description for a COO?" Because that's what he was doing that. And we were good friends before that. I had met him because he hired our company to do some work at his company, at the company he worked for. And we became really good friends. So he said, "Yeah, I can help you." So I invited him and his wife up, Teresa, to our apartment we were at in Orlando. And they came over for a weekend to help me write out a COO for a nonprofit job description. Sunday night before we're done, he says, I want to throw my hat in the ring. Like, I want to see if I can take the job. And I'm like, "You can't." He's like, "Why not?" I'm like, "Because this is going to be like a $50,000 pay cut for you." So no.
Chris's next question was, how much can you afford to lose? And it was like, well, let's figure it out.
Yeah. And it was, and then after he was like, "I'll take the loss," which shocked me. I said, "Okay, I got to step out of the ring then, because you were friends. So I can't make this decision because it would be biased." I said, so I went to the board. And I said, "Okay, guys, we're going to interview these 5 or 6 other people we found, plus Shane. And you guys are going to make the decision because my vote shouldn't count here." And you could tell what happened. And later on, we had some people, that were worked for nonprofits forever, and they didn't take them. So I said, privately, I said to the board once, "I need to understand this. Like, why didn't we hire so-and-so? She worked for a nonprofit for 23 years. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love working with Shane, but she had all this experience in fundraising and everything." And they said, "We don't care about any of that. We need someone who can manage you." So we knew when during an interview, when Shane looked at you and said, "Shut up," and you did, we're like, he's hired, right? Like, so
full-time babysitter.
Yeah. So anyway, that's kind of like from the beginning to, that where we started to grow stages of ILF.
Yeah. And the reality was they had 163 applicants for the job. They narrowed it down to about 10 and then tossed me in. And I was shocked because but it is what it is. And I'm loving being here, and it's thrilling to do what we do.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's worth the pay cut then.
Yeah.
Oh, heck yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. No, that's good. So you mentioned the board, and I know just being around you, Chris, for a lot of this is you have some interesting people, but who else is involved in the foundation?
So back in that day, it was Tim and Neil Fallon and myself, and Neil Fallon's the lead singer of Clutch. And then shortly after that, we got AJ Cook, who's an actress on Criminal Minds there. So we had this kind of really eclectic, amazing board. It was actually a lot of fun because we were getting advice from people who were completely different fields, right? I got my legal stuff from Tim. AJ, as being a parent, she was, and being an actor and being an actress and like some really heavy stuff. Like, she would always come at it from an angle of, well, what can law enforcement do? And then Neil is just this guy who's he's empathy with a beard, right? That's the only way I can describe him. Like, forget what you see on stage, forget what you hear in the album. He'd be the guy that when we would start talking about kids as products, and not that we were treating them that way, but we would talk about cases almost like he would go, "Can we stop for a second? You literally just said you're doing a case about a 6-month-old that was abused by her father. Right. Can we just have a second?" And he would bring it down like crap. Yeah, I kind of talked about that like I was talking about ordering a cheeseburger. And he's like, I need a minute, man. Like, you can't just throw that out there and not give me a minute. So he brought this element to the board that was just like ridiculous. It was just amazing.
So Neil's super quiet.
Yeah.
And he'd be sitting there, he'd be listening. And he'd say, hey, just a second. I got something I think. May not be anything.
Yeah.
But and all of a sudden it'd be mic drop.
Yeah.
Every single time. And just it's that type of personality, thought process that he brought to the board early on. It was amazing.
Yeah.
It got to where we expected anytime he opened his mouth, he was just going to blow us away.
Yeah. But he always started with, this is probably stupid, but
so humble.
It really is. The guy's amazing. And then we brought in Robin Dreek, and this was a whole new level for us because now we had a guy who worked for the FBI, who understood, could speak FBI, right? And although he didn't work with the kids unit, he was able to he worked on the like bringing terrorists in and things like that. He was able to really give us a lot of key advice on like, so what's going to make our reports better? Like, what's going to make it so when we're handing this in to your peers, they're going to look at this and go, oh, I want that. Right. So he helped us really hone our data and our communications with the FBI. Now, as any board happens, people get busy or things go or life gets busy. COVID came. And I got to be honest, when COVID happened, I can't imagine how Neil dealt with it, because if you're in a band, your whole life is about playing live shows. And there were no live shows for 2.5 years. So they were eking by, very stressful. So we amicably parted ways with a couple of those folks, all those folks. And then we brought all of them. Then we brought on Doug Ash. And Doug comes from Deloitte. So it was funny. He was retiring from Deloitte after 30 something years. And Shane and I also know him. We're friends. So we were hanging out with them one weekend. And he started talking about, I'm trying to think about what I should do after I retire. I'm thinking of like, maybe I should get involved in some nonprofits. And both Shane and I were like, let us talk to you about ILF. And then he's just got like, I don't know, 30 plus years of mentoring people, helping young people in business, working at large organizations, Lockheed Martin, Deloitte. So he just has like this experience that is really helping us when it comes to like that level. And then we got really fortunate. I have a really good friend that I met, Stephanie Paul. She's an actress and a communications coach and a storytelling coach and all these things that she did. I met her at a conference and we ended up becoming really close. And after AJ left, we were like, man, we need some female like help on this board, right? Because just a whole bunch of guys, that's really not, we need something. So I went to Stephanie. I'm like, man, I know you're super busy, but would you want to join? Because I think your opinions can help. And she goes, no, I don't want to join. I have a couple of friends I'll talk to. I'm like, really? So she reached out to Dr. Kathy Mathis, which this woman is mind blowing. I mean, Kathy Mathis is like, her story. She was horribly abused by her parents, horribly abused by her ex-husband. Her ex-husband at one point even slit her throat and left her for dead.
Wow.
She was homeless with a baby daughter living on the street. Then with a little bit of help from someone, got picked up, went and got her master's degree, got her PhD, became a psychologist, and now leads a government agency that is advocacy for rape victims. Like, she's just ridiculous. Like,
wow.
Her career is unbelievable, right? She came aboard with Stephanie Paul, and then we were graced to get Erin Gray. And anybody in our age group, Shane and I, if you say Erin Gray, like, wow, like that is that actress. Like, I grew up watching her on all sorts of shows, and it was like really almost intimidating to have her on the board at first, but she is so humble and she's just so amazing, right? So now we had 3 men and 3 women on the board. It was just awesome. We were just like, dang, this is so good. Everything's going great. Had our first gala. Things were really great with that. And then again, some transitions came with Kathy got an amazing job offer with the government. Erin is entering some older years of her life, but her business started booming. And Stephanie got these huge contracts doing some things that were really exciting for her. So they just got too busy and they were afraid they weren't going to vote to time. So it was back to us 3 guys. And And I know Joy's going to hate me for doing this, but I got to tell you this story about this woman, Joy. She fell in love with ILF many years ago and just became a constant donor, a monthly donor. And she was so impassioned by ILF that she started talking to her family about it. And her sister is like a prosecutor for child abuse perpetrators. Can you hear my dog? Can you hear that?
A little bit, but it's fine.
Okay, sorry.
We'll work around it.
So she's telling her sister about you got this group ILF, and her sister's like, oh yeah, I use them all the time. They give me information all the time. So she's like, what? Like, so her family was connected to us. So she's getting married, and she does this most amazing thing. She puts out to all of her guests, we don't want gifts. We want any money you would have spent on a gift, donate to ILF. So she donates her wedding to ILF, and then she invites my wife and I out. We're special guests. She gives a little speech about ILF at her wedding. I'm like, Joy, stop. You're like really, this was embarrassing. They're terrible, right? And so when we started thinking about other board members, I'm like, it has to be Joy. It has to. But she's the most amazing, and she is phenomenal person. Her and her husband Mark are just wonderful people. Her name fits who she is as a person. So right now it's the four of us. It's Tim, and it's Doug, and it's Joy, and myself on the board. So sorry, that was a long-winded answer to your question, but that's the rundown.
No, that's perfect. I love that you went through that whole thing. Also, I think we should clarify it's Tim, not me, Tim.
Oh yeah.
You should never take legal advice from me because I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah, sorry. Tim Maloney, who was my lawyer. And you should never take legal advice from me either, because usually my advice is, yeah, just try it.
Yeah. Let's not do that.
Yeah. So let's talk about the operations side then. So who's involved from like an operational standpoint? I mean, you obviously mentioned the volunteers, but I imagine behind, and we got Shane, the COO, but I know there's a lot more people inside the company that or nonprofit that would.
But Shane, why don't you take this one and talk a little bit about how we operate?
Sure, absolutely. So we're really divided into basically two halves, and so we have the PIT, the Predator Identification Team, and all the things that go along with that. And essentially, Chris heads that up, but we have an employee who is our lead PIT agent who really takes and handles all the day-to-day minutia. And we bring Chris in on some really, really heavy stuff, and then all of the contact with our law enforcement friends. And we have approximately 15 right now that are in the pit. We're at 520 cases accepted by law enforcement in 6.5 years. We are thrilled with that number. Now, that's not cases worked. We've worked more cases than that. However, that's 520 that have been accepted by law enforcement. That's a huge, huge difference. So, when you think about the fact that one predator can affect one kid, but it's usually not. In this type of thing with online, it can be up to 400 kids. So those 520 cases, there's no way for us to grasp or understand the breadth and the depth of the lives that have been affected.
And just to add to that, if I can, sometimes it's not even a perpetrator that we hand in. Sometimes it's a ring, or it's a studio that produces. So when we're handing a case in, I would say the majority of the time it is a person, an individual that we have located that is making child abuse material or selling it or profiting from it. But sometimes in the past it has been like whole websites, whole rings, whole studios. So like Shane said, we just don't know. We're not privy to, because one of our rules from the beginning is I don't want my name on any of these cases.
Exactly.
I don't want ILF's name. I told law enforcement, like, if we take out a ring, that ring may be connected to a cartel. I don't want, Chris Hadnagy did this. I will be happy going to bed at night knowing that I did it. I don't need public praise to feel good. Yeah. Right. So that was one of our things that we did from the beginning. Sorry, Shane, go ahead.
No, you're fine. And in fact, to go along with that, every single general team meeting that we have, it ends with a reminder about how to talk about the ILF and your role. And it is always, I am a volunteer, because we don't want anybody in any type of danger whatsoever. So we really focus in on that.
Yeah, so you're handing it. So are you just then you're not like you're not working full cases then you're just kind of giving information to the FBI or whatever law enforcement entity to help them with their case.
So there's three different kinds of cases that come in, and I can talk about this because of being in the pit. So the primary way we do it is we go on the dark web, we find people who have admittedly produced child abuse material. You know, that means they're actively abusing children and filming it and either selling it or trading it, and we find out who they are in the real world. So we geolocate them. We find out this, Fred Smith lives on 123 Main Street, Nebraska. Now we take all of that evidence and make sure it's 100% legal and reproducible, and we send it to our law enforcement contacts. That's way number one. Way number two is someone can come to the website and they report a case. Sadly, this happens more often with parents who their children were sexploited, and they go to local law enforcement. They live in a very small town. Local law enforcement doesn't know what to do. They don't help, and they get frustrated. Their kid is depressed. They don't know what to, and they come to us and they say, "Can you help us?" And then they give us everything. Of course not. We don't want the picture. They give us the chat logs and names. We geolocate that person, and we hand them into law enforcement. And the third way, which is very rare to happen, but sometimes we will get asked for help. Like a law enforcement agency might say, "We have this case and we're kind of stuck. Can you help us and look at it?" Right? Or another nonprofit will do that. Now, the one thing that we never ever do is we never interact with the predators. And I know this is a big thing because people will go on Facebook and they see these groups that will go out and they make believe they're a 13-year-old kid on the internet. They start, sexting with these people and then get them to come to a McDonald's, and then they film them and embarrass them. 82% of those cases get kicked out of court because the guy the good guy did something wrong. So when we started this, and I found out that Chris Hansen's show to Catch a Predator, 82% of his cases never got prosecuted, I went, we'll never do that, because I want to go to sleep knowing that if I have somebody, I have a volunteer, a young mom there who has a full-time job, and she comes and she gives me 5-10 hours a week or some 20 hours a month. I don't want her time getting wasted and tell her, "Oh, we threw that case out because, we did something wrong." I want her to know that when that case gets handed in, it's going to get worked. So those are the three main ways that we get cases, and some of the things we won't do.
Gotcha. So I think there are other parts of the organization too, right? So you've talked about kind of the pit. What's the other side of it?
So the other side is we call it all education and outreach. And, to Chris's point that he made earlier, is this is actually about prevention, right? So we're up the chain when it comes to human trafficking. We're trying to get everyone before it gets to that point and to cut off the supplier. And that's the idea. And that really starts with education. And one of the things that I wanted to highlight is the request a speaker on our website. Every single time we have an opportunity, Zoom is amazing for this now, because we can turn around and speak to a group. I spoke to a group of about 30 parents at a private school in LA last month. And it was amazing. They stuck around for about another 45 minutes. And then we had a few more stick around after the hour talk, which is what they requested. We spent about 2.5 hours all together with that group. And the questions were phenomenal. That is where it starts, because a lot of these parents don't even understand the things that they should be afraid of for their kids. Yeah. It's fundamental education on internet safety. And the other thing that has really become a large part of what we talk about is every single time you go to a website and they tell you all these things that you should do as a parent, good advice, and they always end with, talk to your kids. And then all of a sudden, we started hearing feedback. How do I talk to my kids? How do I broach this subject? And so that is a big part of what we do. We give advice that we have garnered, best practices over the years of doing this, of how to have an ongoing, kind, open conversation with your kids. It's the modern day sex talk is what it is.
But there's something, Shane, please, for the audience, this is a little rough, but tell them the average age that we are finding in statistics for sexploitation or sexting starting.
Yeah. So the one of the biggest questions we get is when should I start having these conversations with my kids, and or when should I put a device, a phone, in their hand? And we're not going to tell you that because you know your family the best. However, I'll be happy to talk to you about a statistic. And that statistic says that 10% of 8-year-olds have already been exposed to sexting.
That's mind
yeah, I know.
blowing.
So with that statistic, the next question obviously is, so when this happens, do you want your child to be prepared or no? So we're really talking about starting to talk to your kids about internet safety and sex and sexploitation at the 6-7-year-old range.
Yeah. Nowadays, not when we were kids, but nowadays, nowadays you can't wait too long, because then they might have experienced something or get the education from someone else. And you definitely don't want your kids getting this education from their peers at school.
From a predator or a predator.
Yes. Or, God forbid, a predator.
Yeah, absolutely. So what tips, or quickly, not going into a full speech here, but how do you, what are some of the top things to do for talking to your kids that you recommend?
So we recommend a framework that was put together by Robin Dreek. It's called Trust. And real quickly, what that is talking about is talking to your kids every night, having open, honest communication. Relationships. It's not the relationship with you and your kid. Who are the people who are shaping your children's worldview?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's who you need to know. And those are relationships as a parent you really need to be paying attention to. Being understanding. So that's the you and trust. Parents, it's hard, right? I'm a parent. I will never flipping understand how 43% of kids who are 14 think it's okay to sext. I'll never wrap my head around that. So it doesn't mean I'm going to understand it, but I can be understanding. So I can show empathy. We can work with them. We can have conversations about it. Stability is the S in trust. And so how do you as a parent behave when your children approach you with certain things? And then finally, teach. And it's not what you think it is. It's not you as the parent teach the kids. It's have your children teach you what they're interested in. Because look, as a parent, we don't have time to learn everything there is about everything. And even if you could, it would change in 30 minutes. So what are your kids focused on? What are the things they like? What games, apps, etc.? And then have them show you things. And then now you know what to focus on as a parent. So you just narrowed down your entire scope of what is important to your child. Focus on that. So trust, talk, relationships, understanding, stability, and teach.
I'll give you an example that I did with my daughter, and this was real. I wasn't playing her. We were told that, now at this one point in the past that Instagram gave the ability for disappearing messages. I didn't know. So I went to Amaya and I said, hey, I heard this weird thing that now Instagram has disappearing messages. She goes, of course, Dad. I'm like, show me how. She grabs my phone, opens Instagram, shows me. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And I said, okay, I got something else weird. I go to my search in Instagram, and all of a sudden I'm seeing like girls in bikinis. I've never looked for that. I'm not like girls in bikinis. So why am I seeing this in my search? And she's like, well, what have you searched? And she's like, let's look at your history. And it's like, oh, I searched for like gym workouts and, workout ideas. And she goes, that's linked. Fitness models come up on your page now. And I'm like, oh, so this is how, and I start having her teach me things about these apps. And then that makes the conversation easier. So to add to what Shane said about trust, what I always tell parents when I give a speech on this is your children need to see you as their advocate, not their adversary. So if that conversation is awkward, you got to own it. You got to be like, hey, I got to talk to you about something because I heard about it today and it's making me uncomfortable. So can we just sit for like 5 minutes and talk about it? And if things get heated, take a break. Don't raise your voice. Don't yell. It's just not, you got to walk away if things get heated. Say, hey, look, you're upset, I'm upset. Why don't we take 10 or why don't we take 60 and come back to this, right? But what we tell parents is you can't avoid it because it's awkward, and you can't avoid it because your kid doesn't want to talk about it, because they need to know that, hey, if something happens, I'm there for you. I'm not going to be mad. My mind may be blown. I might be shocked. I might be scared, but I don't hate you, and I'll never think badly about you. I need to, right? So a parent, I say one massive piece of advice. If your child comes to you and says, Dad, I sent a picture, you cannot say something like, how dumb could you be? Or what, that was the stupidest thing anyone can ever do. Or what the hell? I can't believe you did that. You can't do any of that, because your kid is already feeling shame and embarrassment and guilt. And if you now add to that by saying, how stupid were you? Yeah, they're going to say I was stupid. And now they're blaming themselves. And this is never the child's fault. This is always the predator's fault.
The other thing too is everything. I agree 100% with everything Chris just said. And the balancing act for a parent is you're still the parent. You're going to be their advocate, but you're still the parent. You still have the house rules. And so that, maintaining that relationship of openness, trust, conversation, you're still the parent. Don't forget.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that framework then on Robin Dreek's site or where? Yeah. Okay.
No, it's on our site.
It's also on yours.
Yeah, it's on our site, but Robin wrote it for us when he was here, because he was going on a news program to represent ILF, and that was one of the topics. They said, hey, can you tell us like a quick way that we can memorize to talk to our kids? And he came up with that. And I was like, that's genius, man. That's awesome.
Well, that's really great.
Yeah.
So how do people get involved?
So you go to innocentlivesfoundation.org and you hit join-us. So that's one way. If you want to volunteer, you can sign up for a newsletter. Obviously, you can donate. Follow us on all of our social medias. It's Instagram primarily is where we're doing a lot of our focus right now, and LinkedIn. And just watch on social media, and you'll see different things that we're doing to help get you involved, learn more. And the website has just become a phenomenal resource. I mean, we have been building that now for almost 7 years. And the volunteer team we have that are putting out the blog articles now, top notch, and just so much better than when Chris and I were doing it.
Yeah, you're kidding. I mean, we have a PhD with her PhD in psychology, writing about trauma and shame and guilt. Like, no, I'm sorry, I was not putting out that quality at that time. No. I was coming at it from a hacker perspective on how to keep your kids safe, monitoring stuff. Right. I want to add something to what Shane said, because I stink at this, but I'm going to do it here. We are a 501c3, right? People always ask this about me. I'm a volunteer for the ILF, even though I'm categorized on the website as a CEO. I am not a paid CEO. I am a volunteer. We have 5 employees that are paid, and everyone else, including me, is a volunteer. But this mission takes money. It does, because to keep the lights on, to keep my 5 people going, to keep our ability to have the tools that we have that enable us to do the work, it takes money. So if sometimes people go, man, I can't do much. I do $5 a month or something. Don't feel bad about that. We got donors that have been with us for 3, 4, 5 years doing $5, $10, $20 a month. Imagine if I had 200 people doing $20 a month. There's $4,000 a month. Right. Uh-huh. I can't argue that. Right. So don't ever minimize what it is. Every little bit helps, and every little bit gets us closer to solving a case and make sure that we can keep the people employed. One of the things that was a core principle for us when we started this was to make sure everybody had free therapy, because even though we're not seeing the content, it's still reading these things and how people talk about children in this way. You can't read it and not be disturbed. So one of our best hires, Erin Maloney, she is a beam of sunshine in the darkest spots of the world. She really is. Yeah. And she takes this job on. She's our wellness director, and she does mandatory wellness sessions with every volunteer. It's part of the contract when you sign it, that you have to agree to see. If you're in the pit, once a month. If you're in E&O, it can be once every 2 months, or as needed. We've had some volunteers that, having kids and didn't realize how hard it was going to be, and they're seeing her every week. Great, do it. do it. I don't care how often, right? And if we max her out, we'll hire another one, under her. Like that, to me, is the most important part of the job, is that if we hurt one of our volunteers to help a child, we haven't balanced the scales. It's not good. Like if I hurt Shane, he can't take care of his family, but I saved 2 more kids. Is that a fair balance? It's not. So we got to make sure we keep that safe. And all of that takes donations. And so far, the people that we have been with have been unbelievably generous.
Agreed.
Well, we're here 6.5 years.
Yeah. So and that was something I wanted to hit on is volunteering. It's not just volunteering, right? It's you're going to be doing you're working with some really, I guess, toxic might be the best way to put it, cases, right? Even though underlying there's things going on, and Shane and I talked a little bit too in person, and we were talking, and I told him about a scenario that I had dealt with, not at ILF, but at work. And he's like, "Yeah, you probably couldn't work for us." And I'm like, "Yeah, I probably couldn't." So it's not for everybody, but
yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
so it takes a little bit, but I do appreciate it. There is a focus on the mental side of it. There's therapy available. There's resources available, because that will help volunteers. But if people are looking and thinking about volunteering, there is they kind of have to ask themselves, are they ready for it, right? And some people have that,
absolutely don't know, right?
Yeah.
Like we had
you don't know
volunteer, amazing woman, came in, gung fire, just wanted to help us, and she stumbled upon a site, and it made her physically vomit. Like she actually vomited, and after that, I can't do this. She goes, I didn't think I'd have that kind of a reaction, And it's like and we're like, please, then don't do it. Please go, be healthy, right? You're not disappointing anybody. Like you having to have a puke can next to your desk because you're going to go do an hour of work for us is not a good trade-off. Like it's not, it's not acceptable. Your mental health is worth way more than that. So yeah, you're 100% right. And we've had people that after we talk about what is our mission, what are we going to do? They're like, oh, I can't. We had this wonderful volunteer with us for years. And then she got pregnant. She's having a baby. I don't know if I can do this with an infant in the house. And I'm like, I get it. Because she's like, I don't know if I can read someone doing this to an infant when I got my brand new baby son, right? I'm like, no, I don't know if I could either if I had a brand new baby here. So yeah, please. So she took a pause for a couple of years because it's like, I don't know if I can do this. Yeah, I get it, right?
It's horrific work. I mean, there's no nice way to put it.
Yeah.
It is really rough stuff. So you have to be prepared. And in fact, when we onboard, you're going to go through 3 full on interviews, because you're going to start with a prerequisite, and then we're going to do a technical, and then you're going to have to get green lighted on wellness. And if we think we're going to, if Aaron comes back and says, I'm afraid we're going to damage this person by having them do this work, no matter how talented you are or how much Chris and I want you here, you don't come on board. Aaron trumps Chris and I.
Yeah.
That was set up intentionally.
Aaron trumps everybody. Like if Aaron came to the board and said, Chris is a problem, I get booted. Right. So it's like we literally put her in this position that as our lead therapist, you are in control of the organization's mental health. So if someone's mental health could cause a problem for ILF, you have to get rid of them. Right. Mm-hmm. So it's like, we wanted to do this to safeguard, because when I started this, I met with NCMEC, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. They were kind enough to set up a meeting with 3 of their lead psychologists. And I asked them for advice. I said, what is it? They go, listen, at the end, they gave me tons of advice, but they told me one thing. At some point in your lifetime, you're going to have an infiltrator. You're going to. If you guys hit any fame and fortune, a predator is going to go, oh, I have free reign to go on child porn sites, and they give me a tool that blocks and blurs and doesn't track, and you're going to have an infiltrator. So they said, when that happens, you can't blame yourself. That's why you got to mandate therapy. You got to mandate these meetings. You got to mandate meetings with me, with Shane, we got to talk to these people, because that way, if someone is in here and their intention is not pure, they're gone.
And that's actually one of the things that we talk about, is that they are being monitored. In fact, anytime that there's a ton of tripwires that are set up inside the virtual environments, and any time a tripwire is tripped, you don't know what the intention is. So it starts a recording about 10 seconds before. It records the whole time. It's about 10 seconds after you've moved out of that area. And because we want to be sure that we're above reproach in everything that we're doing. We can literally pick up, should it be needed, we can pick up that VDI, hand it off to law enforcement, say, take a look. It's all about doing this the right way, and being sure that when we hand in a case that we have given the opposing lawyer no handholds to get that case dismissed.
And here's a bragging point for us. If we had handed in a report that had something that was unclear, we would have been asked to testify. That's one of the things law enforcement tells us. Are you willing to testify? I'm like, when would we have to testify? Well, if something in your report, it could cause the arrest, but we can't prove it. 6.5 years, never been asked to testify. Mm-hmm. Not once. So I'm like, that's something. We're doing something right, because I've never been asked to appear in court for any of our cases that we've handed in. So that I'm bragging, but I'm bragging like because I'm really proud of the team. We have one person on the team. Her whole job is to proofread every report before it gets to me to make sure it has followed every guideline that law enforcement has asked from us. Like her job sucks because she's reading, like she's not out there on the site. She's reading every horrific thing that's happening because every one of our pit members is writing up the reports from the horrific thing, and she's proofreading them to make sure that they're following the guidelines, just so when we hand that in, we can go to bed knowing we did our best job on that.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, it sounds like you guys have put a lot of thought into this, which is good. What final thoughts do you have around the ILF? If you don't have them, we can.
No,
that's okay. Go ahead, Chris.
I was thinking, in on September 21st, we're holding our second annual gala, and I never thought I'd be running an organization that holds galas, right? So last year we did something all fancy and everyone got dressed up, but we had this band called the Action Figures, which is a band made up of all of these celebrities that have actual action figures. That's how they came up with the name. And they fell in love with us and our mission. So they invited us out to use their studio in LA. It could fit about 200 people. And we're going to have like what I'm calling a grunge gala. It's not. John Mitchell hates when I say that because you can't come all grungy. But
I do too. Yeah, you can't come all grungy, Chris.
Yeah, but a grunge gala, because we're not coming in tuxes and suits and ties. We're coming because it's gonna be like a rock and roll show, right? And we're gonna have fun, and we're gonna auction off some things, and we're gonna talk about our mission, and we're gonna bring enlightenment to it. So you can find out information on InnocentLivesFoundation.org if you want to come out and support us, and have a great time, meet some really awesome people. That could be a great way to get involved at first and just meet the team and see if you like what we're doing.
So I was thinking along those same lines, but the reality is, and Chris alluded to it earlier.
Worst timing to freeze, right?
Oh,
that is
no.
the way it is.
Wait, Shane. You're going to have to repeat that, because literally you said, I've been thinking about this, and then you froze. It was like the perfect timing to freeze.
Sorry. Yeah, everything just started going black.
Yeah.
Right. And now, like I'm looking at my video and it's all dragging and everything.
Oh, wow.
Let's see. What did I say?
We don't know. You froze. And
right. When did I freeze?
It was like, I was thinking about this and something along the line of what Chris said.
Yeah. All right. So what I was thinking about, Timothy, when you asked that last question, had to do with what Chris was talking about earlier. If you love the work that we do and you think it's valuable, that it enhances lives, makes this world a better place, then please support us, because we want to keep doing this work. But until we're fully funded by something that we just don't see coming at us out of left field, we're fully dependent upon the kindness of others. And so if you value this work, please help us to continue to do it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's InnocentLivesFoundation.com.
.org.
I'm sorry. Let me correct that. Let's look, we can post-edit all this.
Yeah, .org.
I am sorry.
It's actually, you can't run it on
nonstoprun.com. Do me a favor. Go ahead and try typing InnocentLivesFoundation.com. I think it will redirect.
Well, does it really?
fast.
Oh, I did not know that.
Well, I used to. I've not tried it in a long time.
SLSfoundation.com. I'm trying it. Oh, it did. It took a minute, but it did. So technically, I was right, Chris.
Hey.
I did not know we had that functionality. I just learned something new on Tim's podcast.
Yeah, cool.
There you go.
I might not have to edit that out now. We'll see. But yeah, so innocentlives.org. I will also never forget that again. And then, yeah, you guys are on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, all the things. So, but yeah, Shane and Chris, I really appreciate you guys coming on to talk about the Innocent Lives Foundation.
Thanks, Tim.
Timothy, thank you. We appreciate you having us here.
And that will do it. Hopefully you learned something. If you didn't, email me at timothy.dblock@exploresec.com or reach out to me on LinkedIn and let me know what you didn't learn, and we'll cover it in a future episode. We'll see you next time, Security Explorers.